Another day and another collab. This is episode, I think, 4 now of the collab series that I'm doing before training camp. What is up, fans? Yes, last week we had Alf, Richmond Webb, and then we ended with Tobin. Great collabs last week. This week we are starting with my guy, Reason from Finside the NFL. I'm also going to have Jason Sarney on this week, and I'm trying and working at 2 big collabs. Now, I'm not saying they're going to happen because I'm working my hardest to try to get them to happen, but one of them, they've already been on this channel. The other one's never. So I got a lot going on for you guys. Like I said, this week and then next week, collabs. And then the week of the 22nd, the vets report on the 23rd. And then camp is open for you guys, me included, because I'll be there the 15th of August, on the 28th. And that's when my camp recap videos are going to start. So starting in 2 weeks, the 22nd, we're in full camp mode. I'm going to preview camp. I'm going to preview a lot of things. I'm going to go over all this stuff, what to expect, yada, yada, bing, bang, bing. So I got a lot planned for you guys. But before we jump into me and Reason having a very good conversation, it's crazy. You see the length of this video. Very good conversation. I'm also going to put this on the podcast on Spotify. Yeah, on Spotify, so you can listen to it there if you're walking or driving or anything. I have to shout out today's sponsor. That is Clean the World. My man, Sean Seipler, my brother from another mother, is doing fantastic things for people in need. He is doing so much good for people that need help, whether it's third world countries, whether it's people, impacted by natural disasters, whether it's the homeless. He is putting these kits together. He is repurposing soap that people don't use, cleaning it and giving it to people. Shower stations. Fantastic stuff. If you haven't yet, go check out the website, cleantheworld.org. And if you can support. He's working on a lot of cool things to do, so it's going to be really fun. So, Sean, thank you for sponsoring this video. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I think we're going to be talking linebackers in the camp battle position or some other things. I got a lot planned for you guys. Like usual, stay classy. Fins up. I'm doing a collab. I got to get my man Reason here. Reason from Finside the NFL. What is up, bud?
How's it going, brother? Thanks for having me.
No problem, dude. Yeah, we gotta chat it up. We gotta talk Miami Dolphins football. And I've been doing this with everyone else, so I'm going to start it with you as well. We're going to talk Tua Tagovailoa. We're going to talk quick because I feel like it's been beaten to death. Contract situation. What's your thoughts on it? I'm of the camp that it will get done before training camp starts. What's your thoughts on it?
I think Tua Tagovailoa's contract gets done before the season starts. I think the sweet spot, if the contract isn't agreed upon during training camp, will be in that time frame before the regular season starts and training camp ends. And I call it that sweet spot because I do think that's when the Miami Dolphins' best offer through this whole process will come, if it doesn't come during training camp. I do think it gets done. I think it's just all coming down to guaranteed money and structure. They want to have some protections. And I talk about this, Joe Burrow got all that money, right? And you think the Bengals aren't looking back and saying, hey, I wish we had a little bit more of a protection in there, because right now Joe Burrow's a more injury prone quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa. Now, does he have more accolades in terms of playoff wins and such? 110%. But he's still coming with that little asterisk, right? Which is crazy because if you think about it, Doug, the 2020 draft class has the potential to be generational, but everyone has an asterisk right now. Tua can't win in January, right? Joe Burrow, injury prone. Herbert, Tua, but worse in terms of choking. You know what I mean? And then Jordan Love, such a small sample size. Now, is it fool's gold? Everyone knows. Go back to me when I came to this community. I'm a bit of a fan of Jordan Love since he came out of Utah. For me in that draft, it was take 2 at 5 or trade back and get Jordan Love. So I believe he's got the skill set. I believe he's got the tool, and I believe he's been properly developed. But with Tua Tagovailoa, when I also name that whole group, Jordan Love might also be paid. And we're not even talking about Jalen Hurts. Jordan Love might also be paid too before Tua might be the last one to be paid out of that group, yet the only one that's ever led the league in passing yards. The only one that has 4 straight winning seasons. You know, just saying, right? Like, I mean, I hope it gets done. I think it's going to get done. We've got no reason to panic or believe it won't get done.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, there is some separating factor here, and I really think it's coming down to guaranteed money. And I think, I did this calculation. If you take Joe Burrow's new deal and you
Mm-hmm.
spread the real money out over the actual time, so let's say it's a 5-year deal, which it was, don't add on the extra years in terms of the 5th-year option, et cetera, et cetera. Just take that
Yeah.
5 years and split up the real money. It's about $29.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
You do that same with Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence, you do that same exercise, it's about $28.4 million. So really, there's only like a $1 million per year buffer in terms of real money between those guys. I think right now, they're probably coming in a little bit lower than that 28.3, right? I think that's what he's talking about with the market is market. Don't look at the 55 or 56 million a year.
Yeah.
I can give you 56 million a year, but I can guarantee you 100 million. What good is that to you?
Exactly.
Right? And what are the escalators? What do you have to do? It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
play time. You're going to have to win Pro Bowls. You're going to have to get named to All Pros. You're going to have to win a whole hell of a lot of playoff games. You're going to have to lead in a lot of statistical categories to reach that fake number, as our friend Omar calls it, right? So, I think this is just they're not in the area. They're not in the same area when it comes to guaranteed money. And I do think there's some structure issues with this contract in terms of playing time incentives usually are going to get balked at by agents.
Yeah,
That's written
100%.
throughout the contract. That's probably a big issue, right? So, I mean, I think it gets done. And the real question you got to start asking is there tension? Is tension brewing between Chris Greer and Tua Tagovailoa? Because Tua Tagovailoa is looking here. I put up with the Brian Flores there. I've done
Yeah.
everything you've asked for since McDaniel got here. My coach loves me, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. It's a tricky situation, and I do think it gets done. But like you said, this horse has been beaten so much, right? People are just sick of talking about it.
It's that time of the year, man. We got one more week after this week, and then the rookies are reporting on the 16th, and the vets are reporting on the 23rd, and then the first day of camp open to everyone is the 28th. So we're getting there, but it's just because even ESPN is talking about it, NFL Network is talking about it. There's nothing else to talk about except for Tua. And do you think it'll hurt if Jordan Love gets his contract before Tua, or do you think it helped?
I think it'll hurt because I think if Trevor Lawrence got that money, I think Jordan Love's going to come in that same area too. I think he's going to be in that range of $53 to $56 million. And then here's the thing. Have you noticed who represents the 3 major quarterback contracts that are left to be signed?
Mm-hmm.
Athletes First represents Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, and Tua Tagovailoa. And we all know since around the draft, Dak Prescott is asking for in the ballpark of $60 million. This is just going to keep escalating.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then he's going to ask for more guaranteed money, and we're going to get into all that. So, we're really getting into, I heard something a few years ago when the Watson stuff was going on in terms of him negotiating his contract. And then I heard it last year when Lamar was negotiating his contract about how Athletes First wants to represent every quarterback in the NFL because they want to corner and control that market. And we are now feeling the ripple effects. Right now, we are getting into you didn't get out ahead of Goff. Then you didn't put smoke behind your butt to get it done after Goff got signed. You let Trevor listen. You go watch any show I did, brother. When I heard the Cons were willing to pay $50+ million to Trevor Lawrence, I said, "You better get this done right now." And because I'll be honest with you, I think Tua Tagovailoa is a top 8 quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence falls in that 12 to 15 range. You can say he's top 12. You can say he's top 15. That's where I believe he is. And now you're running into a situation with Jordan Love where he's fresh off a playoff win. Sure, it's a small sample size, but everyone's loving Love right now,
Yep.
right? It's the hottest his market's been. He already played ball with them. Remember, he took that extension, that short extension.
Yep.
So they're going to probably reward him for that because he rewarded them. And, you cannot continue. I just don't understand lack of getting out. This is, me and you were talking backstage about Greer, and we can both agree we like Greer, but Greer has his flaws.
Yeah.
And one of his biggest glaring flaws is he never projects the market,
Mm-hmm.
and they never properly project a player's development next to the developing market,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they coincide. Like, I remember 2 years ago, a lot of us are screaming, sign Christian Wilkins. The market is $14 to $16 million right now. Last offseason, remember, Doug, me and Neil broke it. No one wanted to believe that Christian Wilkins was asking for over $20 million a year. People were saying, you guys are clickbaiting. And we said, no, we're here, and he wants over $20 million a year. 22, 24 is the number we're here right now. And now this guy gets $27 million, Doug. And you could have had him 2 years ago. Now I get people are going to say, well, maybe their agents saying, hey, wait, let the market develop and we can get
Mm-hmm.
paid. That's cool. But you didn't get out ahead of Robert Hunt. You
No.
didn't get out ahead. And now you're not getting out ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. And what's happening? You're continuing to allow the market to develop right in front of you. And it's costing you more money by the passing day. Literally.
Yeah, seriously. And, it's going to get to that point where say, God forbid, he doesn't sign a contract. I talked about this in a previous video. You look at next year, if he balls out, we win a playoff game and he gets us to that next promised land, the cap's only going to go up. And Athletes First is going to write that down. He did this, he did that, and you're getting more money next year. We're going to want another 15 million on top of that. And it's just,
well, the other thing I bring up too, Doug, is if you think about it, the last 2 years we've kind of escaped by the skin of our teeth in terms of he was in the MVP conversation, and then the concussion, issues popped up regularly in 2022 that derailed his season. Last year, he was in the MVP conversation, and we were in the conversation and in the running for top seed in the AFC.
mm-hmm.
And we started our collapse in week 17. So right until basically right until the end there, we were in that he was in that conversation. And, obviously the Ravens game and the Bills games changed that conversation. But what's going to happen when he finishes off that race? What's going to happen when he finishes the job, when he crosses that finish line? Now you're talking about if he would have won the MVP last year, if we would have won the division, we would have won those 2 games. We would have won the division. He would have won the MVP because he led the league in passing, right? He would have won the MVP, and we still lost in the first round. Do you think we'd be sitting here in this position right now, or do you think he'd be paid?
No, he would have been paid by now. He would have been.
And all it was 2 games.
Yeah, he would have been paid way before any of that. Probably like before free agency started. Like you talked about, how that was a thing that was being talked about, that you signed Tua to a contract extension, you're clearing cap space. So it only made sense to have that happen before free agency started. I think that's when it would have happened.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I think it's, what the other thing is too, Doug? We all know you basically have pretty much agreed on the framework, and we're getting into the finer details here. So, get it done, number one. Number two, you guys have petitioned all off season. We're going to get this done. He's going to blah, 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 all this jazz, okay? So, back up, we don't want to hear about this because I think, Doug, another frustration you're having live from people who either support our quarterback or don't support our quarterback. I think a lot of people get worn out by the Tua talk. It doesn't matter which narrative it helps out. And one thing that I think is frustrating a lot of us is you have so many chances in this kid's 4 years, going on 5 years here in the Dolphins, to get out ahead of and kill narratives, and you regularly don't. You let them go out there. You let them stew. You let his PR team go to work. You let us on YouTube discuss it all, whatever the case may be. It's just, do you think, I mean,
It's crazy. I mean, they didn't even let it get remotely near the stage for Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't let it get remotely near the stage for Justin Herbert. And the one thing people are going to say is Trevor Lawrence, well, he's won a playoff game. Well, go compare Trevor Lawrence's career to Tua Tagovailoa's career, because the games played isn't that very far off,
Mm-hmm.
but the numbers are in Tua's favor. And I don't want to hear, well, he's got Tyreek, he's got Jalen Waddle. My friend, they went out and traded for Calvin Ridley. They went out and paid, Zay Jones that money. They went out and paid Christian Kirk all that money. They went, he's got a tight end. You know what I mean? And Mercedes Lewis, right? They've got all these tools for him, and they've even spent money on the offensive line. Hell, they had a running back coming off the greatest single rookie season for a UDFA running back, and they dropped him to go draft Trevor Lawrence's buddy from Clemson, Travis Etienne. They've done everything for that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Everything for that kid. But why is it he can't elevate those players, but Tyreek Hill is putting up better numbers with Tua than he did with Mahomes? Why is Jalen Waddle constantly elevated? I'll do you one better. Why was Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Lynn Bowden Jr., Malcolm Perry, household names that legitimately fans didn't want to get rid of because they like their upside, and now half of that list is flipping burgers somewhere, and they weren't living up to what they were playing with Tua Tagovailoa. And I'll give you another perfect example. Mike Gesicki. How many people in this fan base? I know you saw it, Doug. You got to pay this guy 10 plus million. You got to pay them all this money. Why? Because all of Tua's top guys would go down. Tua would be forced to play with Gesicki more. He would elevate Gesicki. And what has Gesicki been since then? Because everyone told us Mac Jones after his rookie year was better than Tua, and Gesicki looked like a shell of himself, and now he's going to Cincinnati hoping Burrow can reinvigorate his wallet in his career. I mean, that's where we're at right now. So you've got a guy in Tua who elevates player, has a history of elevating player, good or bad, while Trevor Lawrence can't elevate a guy in Calvin Ridley, who we all remember how he looked playing number 2 to Julio Jones with Matt Ryan throwing him the football. Just saying.
And that's always the stigma. And I always say this, that Tua can go win a Super Bowl, and it'll always be it's the system and it's the weapons. It's not Tua.
We talked about this, right? He could win a playoff game this year, and we lose in the next round. What's it going to be? Well, that was a Super Bowl roster.
Yeah, you don't hear for Jalen Hurts, who got to the Super Bowl with the Super Bowl roster.
Yeah.
That's
one of the most complete rosters in recent memory, too.
I've talked about this to people that after the 2021 season, they stockpiled on first-round picks because they were going to move off of Jalen Hurts. But then they put the best team in football around him. He goes to the Super Bowl. They paid him. Like, people forget that they were going to move on from Jalen Hurts. He was not good his first 2 years.
Yeah.
Interesting. But, yeah, so that's all the Tua stuff. Let's shift it over. Let's talk a little bit of offense. We'll talk a little offense. Offensive line, are you as nervous still about the interior as I am? Or do you think that, I like Isaiah Wynn. I'm more questionable about that right guard. And I'm starting to warm up to Brewer because I've realized the quarterbacks he has been in front of. Ryan Tannehill, who has horrible pocket presence, and a rookie in Levis. Are you as nervous of the interior as I am, or are you like it'll bounce back?
If you could tell me that the interior is going to be healthy for the year, I'm fine. The problem is the depth. Like, you got to be actively rooting against Liam Eichenberg, basically, to lose the right guard spot to Driscoll so we have a backup center. I mean, who are you depending on right now? Andrew Meyer at UDFA? You know what I mean? Like, and then when you look at Isaiah Wynn, are we all happy where Robert Jones and Lester Cotton are at this stage of the development? I know we all had a lot of hopes for Robert Jones last year, but then when he got those reps, Robert Jones didn't look good. And Isaiah Wynn's history tells you you can trust on him as much as you can trust on Teron Armstead to play every game of the year, right? So you got to have a backup plan. Now with Armstead, we've got Patrick Paul, we've got Kendall Lamb, who I think is to be ahead of him. But then, like, the interior, my issue starts to get into depth is really because, Aaron Brewer's already missed time. So who's his backup if he misses more time? Isaiah Wynn, if you're a betting man, I'm sure the odds aren't in your favor in terms of if you want to take a bet on, him playing a full season. So, that's where my issue is. I don't think, and then when you look at a guy like, okay, it feels like they've kind of settled with Eichenberg and Driscoll. When we got Driscoll, I told everyone, I said, here's your right guard battle. Here it is. And, you still got guys out there who can contribute, like a Greg Van Routen, et cetera, et cetera. But I legitimately, people want to say they don't want to bring in competition for Tua. I ask you, what kind of competition have they brought in for Liam Eichenberg? At least Tua Tagovailoa has shown us, we just talked about it. He's led the league in passing. What has Liam Eichenberg ever led the league in besides pressure given up, relative to snaps taken? You know what I mean? Like, I think the interior is an issue, and it starts with the depth because you got guys that you aren't even certain you can fully rely on, and you haven't done enough to shore up a lot of our concerns behind those guys, because a lot of us saw how dominant of a run blocker Isaiah Wynn was, and how good of a how good he was in pass pro when he was asked to be. I don't think that I'm with you with Aaron Brewer. I don't think the drop off from Connor Williams to Aaron Brewer is going to be as steep as people thought he was, as people think it might be. I think he's more athletic. They'll be able to do things with him that they couldn't do with Connor Williams. So I think he'll be better there. And plus, hey, he's only gonna be holding his blocks and pass pro for like 2.2 seconds. He'll be fine. And then, Eichenberg, I always talk with Richmond, and one thing we would talk about with the offensive line is one leak you can get away with.
Yeah.
And that's what I look at with Eichenberg and Driscoll. We can get away with mediocrity there if the rest of the guys are healthy. Now, my question to you is, does Austin Jackson's game dip off a little bit now that Robert Hunt is not next to him?
I didn't think of that.
And he's having to make up for the issues that might happen at right guard. That's a real concern and question. So, there might be a ripple effect that people aren't even really talking about. They're just sticking to the interior. So, but I think you can get away with that. I think you can get away with Driscoll or Eichenberg if everyone else does their job around them. I think you'll be fine. It's when you start getting into 2 to 3 leaks. And here's the other thing too. Yes, you can get away with 1 leak, but the last place you want to leak on is the interior, because that's the quickest way to the quarterback. If it's on the edge, you can, at least do things to slow them down or have them arc around you. That takes more time. When you're put on your heels right away and you're at the guard position or center position, or you're getting your face crossed over and giving up the inside instantly, that's gonna, never mind a pass, you might not even get the handoff off. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm with you. The interior to me is my biggest concern. And it feels like after they shored up Calais Campbell, if they shored up this interior, Doug, I know how long me and you have been fans for. That would be the most complete team we've probably seen since Jay Fiedler had the reins in Miami, and might even be even more complete. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And we were
gotta short up.
We were talking about that off camera, about the play to Waddle that got brought back against Kansas City. That was Robert Jones. He was a holding call.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
brutal.
It's just a problem. It was it's either a holding call, and it was either him and God bless him, but Julian Hill. So many times we had nice runs to the outside and Julian Hill holding, bring it back, or it was an eligible receiver downfield, and it was just you always just want to pull your hair out. Like, just stop moving forward, just stay where you are, stop moving. But yeah, I didn't think about the fact that
I think we were the most penalized team when it comes to first downs taken off the board last year.
And it put us in a hole. It was always 1st and 15.
Yeah, we had like 20 or 20 something first downs taken back. Al threw that stat out when we did that panel.
Crazy. And I didn't think about that Austin Jackson thing, because how much did he benefit? I mean, we like to talk about Christian Wilkinson Sealer and who benefited from who. He had Robert Hunt on his left side, and that's to his blind side, which is that's going to be a problem. I didn't think of that. But speaking of Wilkins and Sealer, this is where we find out the whole chicken and the egg. Who was whose, crutch, and was it a salt and pepper thing? Was it a 1-2 punch? how bad do you think it's going to hurt losing Christian Wilkins?
And this might not be a popular opinion. I think the players they brought in relative to the production, I don't think you're gonna like Aaron Brewer to Connor Williams. I don't think you're gonna see that steep of a drop off. I think Calais Campbell can still play at a high level. I think he can give you that interior pass rush. He can set the edge. He can move around the front. And brother, I think, Zach Seiler's been good since Flores was here.
Yeah.
It's not like this kid just turned it on.
Mhm.
He's been a dog. I don't think there's going to be that big of a off. I really don't. I don't know. Maybe, call me a homer or whatever the case may be is, but you've added Neville Gallimore, Benito Jones to that. If Tier Tart can get his stuff together on that interior, add in, obviously, Calais Campbell, I think you can get, you know what it reminds me of? It
What's that?
reminds me of that movie with Brad Pitt, Moneyball.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Where
One of my
they're
favorite.
trying to get similar production just to a cheaper cost. And
Just
I
get on
think
base. Yeah.
that's what they've done.
I love that movie. It's such a good, and it's the whole art of it, because it's just in Moneyball, he wanted guys who can get on base. You get on base, you got runners.
Yeah.
You got runners, you can score.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing that they're, because even Weaver came out, he said it's going to be like a hockey thing. It's going to be a nice rotation of those interior guys, because we got a lot of big ones. Benito Jones coming back after playing with Detroit with Dan Campbell and all that stuff. He's a guy that I'm very excited to see come back and what he can do.
And they're just it's kind of similar what they did with Matabuki, right?
Mhm.
You chain yourself to a dog, which in this case is going to be Seiler, and then you get a nice solid rotation next to him to help keep him that stays fresh, and then you pick the best guys out of that bunch that can rotate in for Seiler when you need to keep him fresh.
Man, if our defense can just get better than it was, because this is
Brother, if we can stop the run, we're dangerous.
Oh, because this is the next thing I want to talk about. Anthony Weaver. A lot of times you bring in a new coordinator, whether it's offense or defense, I always give it about 4 weeks till you really see what they are. But he brought in his guys. He brought in his style of player. He literally brought in Calais Campbell, and the guys that we have fit into the scheme that he used to run. We brought in Fangio. Fangio wasn't a big blitzer. You bring in Anthony Weaver, Rex Ryan, Wink Martindale, McDonald. Do you think it's going to take about 4 weeks for this defense to start rolling, or do you think,
I think, last year I remember people panicking over those first couple of weeks of fire Fangio, and I kept telling everyone, give them until week 8, and then they started clicking at like week 6.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be even quicker with Weaver, because a lot of the stuff he does here, you talked about how he's bringing in people, but a lot of the stuff he's going to be doing here, there's going to be some similarities to what they were doing under Brian Flores, some of these guys who have been around for a minute. I think you've already heard players talk about this. The terminology is easier to pick up for them. I think we're going to be a top 10, top 5 defense again.
If we can be top 10 offense and defense, that's Super Bowl numbers. And I don't throw that around a lot, man. But
we got it. Listen, got to win the division.
Yes.
And, I remember what loss did we have last year? We had a loss last year somewhere on the road in the first 8 weeks. And I went live reaction after it for the post-game show. And I remember telling everyone, like, yo, there is no team in the NFL that needs to win enough games to get home field advantage than our team. You need to win that division, and you need to be going for that a minimum 2 seed. Like, if this team gets home field advantage, like if we would have won out last year and got home field advantage throughout the whole thing, now albeit Kansas City beat everyone, so I'm not going to sit here and say, but we wouldn't have played them to begin with anyways. But
the Steelers.
We can go to the AFC Championship, bro. If we get home field advantage for the first 2 rounds, we're going.
We were dangerous at home last year. The only games we lost was the Tennessee game when we fell apart, and the Bills game when we had no one healthy.
Yeah.
We were
And we should have
dangerous.
won the Tennessee game handedly.
That was a team collapse, even though there was so many deciding factors in that game. And a lot of people, I even forget about Bradley Chubb taking his helmet off, which
Yeah.
gave
I
him the
blame
first
it. Listen,
down.
yeah, listen. There's games where I think Tua could have done more and Mike McDaniel could have been better. And then you know who I blame for the Germany game? I blame Tyreek. I'm sorry. You're up by 2 scores with 3 minutes, and Vic Fangio is your defensive coordinator. Now, you brought up the Bradley Chubb. Also, you remember when Xavier Howard bid on that pick?
Oh my God.
And Levis floated it over him for that big conversion. Players go into business for themselves and stuff. That defense, I think, is what let it. Listen, you could say, well, if Tua got 2 more first downs, brother, your defense has that many stars on it, and Vic Fangio leading the way. That should be a 99.9999999% of the time. That's a wrap.
3 minutes. Look, 3:15, 3:20 left in the game.
And if we win that game and then beat Dallas,
we clinch the division.
Yeah.
So the last 2 games are nothing. Bradley Chubb probably would have torn his ACL in the Ravens game.
Yeah, because after the Ravens game, they would have realized the 1 seed's out of reach, and they just would have sat him for Buffalo.
They would have sat him, not played him within the last 4 minutes of the game where he just blew his knee out.
I remember when that game happening. Like, even my takeaways on X, it was clear as day that if things didn't go our way in the end, because we all knew what was happening in December and January, that was going to be the game we pointed to. Now, I want to clarify. Tua's 9-7 in December. It's January where he only has 1 win in January. That's the problem.
It ain't December.
It ain't December. He's got a winning record. It's January. That's the issue.
Now,
because, hey, bro, I know you were feeling the energy when he let us down for that game-winning field goal on Christmas, bro.
Yes. People look at that Cowboys game and they think, oh, he threw 1 touchdown, 5 field goals, yada, yada. You go back and watch Hard Knocks where Mike McDaniel calls the play and he says yes. And then Mike McDaniel goes to talk to Tyreek and Tua tells him to go to the sideline, go. And then he's talking to Braxton Berrios, but addressing Tyreek Hill. So the opposed, this is the stuff that a franchise quarterback, the leader of your team, does to Tyreek. I'm going to need you to catch this. He's standing next to him. He's talking to Braxton. These are things that, he only threw 1 touchdown. We kicked 5 field goals, but he took over that last drive to get us to win. People underestimate that stuff.
And you know what it was? It felt like the first playoff game of the season, and I think we all thought we were turning that corner.
Yes. When we won that game, I was like, this is different.
Because that was win and guarantee. Now, that was win and get in for Dallas too, right?
Yes. It was important. They didn't rest their guys. They were coming after us. And then the other part of that is in the locker room at halftime on Hard Knocks, where he pulls Teron Armstead to the side. And he's like, I need you to play you. Because he was getting blasted in that game by Parsons.
Yeah.
And he won it, though.
Yeah. See, that's what I say. Listen, I get people's argument about Tua needs to show up more in big moments and in big games. I agree 110%. But what I say to those people is don't act like he can't do it.
Yes.
What frustrates you so much is he's shown you he can do it, and he can do it at a high level. But what frustrates everyone is he doesn't do it nearly consistently enough. Instead of winning 50 to 60% of those times, he wins like 25 to 33% of those times, and that's not good enough. And I get that. But people blanket it and say he can't do it, which is a flat-out lie. And I go back to this, Doug. If you remember when me and EM, Choo, were leading that Tua train, and if you remember the conversation we'd have on the Tuesday night panel, people would ask us, okay, you love Tua, so what's the flaws? And one of the things we'd bring up was he doesn't have a lot of fourth quarter experience and big game, second half crunch time experience. Now, I played a clip on my show a couple weeks ago from Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow was talking about why do you think guys like Mahomes and Josh Allen are so good and so calm and so poised in crunch time? Because they go to places like Texas Tech and Wyoming. They see those fourth quarters. They play deep into those games. You know what I mean? It's like, and he says, this is a skill that's developed. Like, you need reps to develop that. And one of the big problems with Tua was when you add in the injuries and when you add in the blowouts, how many close games was Alabama really in? Now,
That's
I get
true.
it. He came in the national championship, threw the touchdown to win it, but I go back to my earlier point. Yeah, he's got it in him. He just doesn't do it consistently enough.
Exactly.
That's, you know what I mean? And I think it's because he does. And then what? Compound that and factor in this fact, okay? Mike McDaniel's going through the same thing.
Yes.
He hasn't learned to win as a head coach in big moments and big games yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can all talk about how not good his game plan was in Kansas City, and how Steve Spagnuolo just basically had the best game plan and outcoached and outmaneuvered, Mike McDaniel. And that's the problem. Like, I go back to it now. I know they eventually started winning some games in and they won an NFC championship. But remember Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid? They couldn't win the big one, right? They got, how many times did they go? They went to 4 NFC championships and one Super Bowl. Couldn't win the big one, right? Got Tyrell Owens, and that's when they got to their farthest, right? McNabb had all those yards. Couldn't win the big one. What happened? Andy Reid had to leave, went to Kansas City, learned, turned Alex Smith into what he turned Alex Smith into, MVP candidate, and then he got a hold of a one-of-one in Patrick Mahomes. And now he knows how to win consistently, and he's doing it at a crazy rate because we're in a time we've never been in. We went from 120-year dynasty to now a potential 10-year dynasty. Because, listen, people can say, I want this from Tua, I want that from Tua, I need this from Tua. Here's a news flash for everyone. How many quarterbacks have beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs that are active? One. How many in total have beat him in the playoffs? 2. One of them is Tom Brady, the greatest ever, and Joe Burrow. We remember how good that defense was. We remember how good that team was. Remember, everyone wants to credit Joe Burrow, Dougley, but you remember how lit up he was getting in those playoffs because he couldn't even make the hot reads, bro.
Oh, yeah.
He couldn't even make the hots, and they were just killing him coming off the line. So that's what I'm saying. Like, brother, that's rare air. There's only 2 quarterbacks since Patrick Mahomes started that have beat him in the playoffs.
And Andy, like you're talking about Andy Reid, last year he had to completely change his offense because he had no receivers. He came out and said, I needed to take Patrick Mahomes and I needed to make him conservative because he had no one. And then
and we need our defense to help us win games. Exactly. Bro, you played your strengths and your weaknesses, right? And Andy Reid has now mastered that. And he was you could see he was mastering it in Philadelphia. And I think you're seeing signs of McDaniels mastering it here, but it's not mastered yet. Now, I think we all hope they master it together, but people don't realize there's levels to this ish. Like, winning is especially winning in crunch time for your coach and your quarterback. They need reps. And this is the first time Mike McDaniel's ever been a head coach. And again, I go back to Alabama resume of Tua. How many crunch time? And hey, listen, he almost put in that LSU game.
Oh my God. So many drop touchdowns. So like even with the interception and the fumble back, and he was answering touchdowns after touchdown. It was
You remember Jerry Jeudy dropped it like inside the 5, right? And if he would have caught that, they would have won the game. But what did they do? Remember what Saban did? The first half, it was throw the ball, lean on Tua. Second half, it was like, no, okay. Incorporate Najee and let Tua work off the run game. And what did he do? Right? And it's what they're building here. That's why I think they got Jalen right. I think they're looking in those months we're talking about, December, January, and they're saying we haven't been able to rely on Raheem Mostert. Achane is still learning his body because he never got hurt at Texas A&M. We need another back. So, by quantity alone, and they're all quality, by quantity alone, we're going to have someone to rely on by the time we get to January. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's where we kind of come off, like whatever you want to call it that month, to an year, to whatever, is because it's the statement of he doesn't. It's not that he never does things and he doesn't do things. He just doesn't do it enough.
Yeah.
Like that's when you said that, like that's yes, 100%. He wins big games and he wins in the moment. He literally against the Baltimore Ravens was down 21. Like, yeah, it's week 2, but that's huge. Like he dropped
Well, do you
70
remember how
on
he looked for
football
those
team.
first couple games as a rookie, and then that Arizona game happened, and we
He's
were all like, "Whoa,
running.
that's the
He was
guy we saw at
running in that
Bama."
game. Like broke Buda Baker's ankles in that
Do you
game.
remember Kyler Murray didn't want to shake his hand? He just went off the field.
These are the little glimpses, and I've been saying it through his whole career. That's where I'm frustrated because the consistency. I needed to see consistency in his passing. We saw consistency in his passing. Now I need to see consistency in the end of the games. Maybe we'll see it.
And we should have swept Buffalo in 2022 if Tyreek Hill, Trent Sherfield, or Josh Boyer did their job, because he was one of the best players on the field that day. And that Sherfield and Tyreek Hill drop on the same drive, and then Josh Boyer and that defense allowing that 3rd and 17 conversion and that touchdown before half. If any one of those things go our way, we win that game. And that was in snow, in cold.
It's like 30
in
something
Buffalo's
degrees.
house. Our as Omar
Throwing
calls him, our
snowballs
daddy
at
as of
us.
late.
It was 100%.
Like, you know what it feels like, Doug? It feels like if they it feels like when it comes to the Bills in the playoffs, like if they would have swept them in 2022, you would have exercised that demon and we'd be on a different play. And it seems like that with the playoff win. Once they exercise that demon of that first win, it feels like they could come in bunches. You know what I mean? Like, and they could go on a roll. Like this team, it seems like a team that's very driven internally by belief in themselves.
Yeah. And you got McDaniel having all his meetings start at 2:24 and 6:24. And hey, they said last year they're not going to have that same collapse in December, and they didn't. To their credit, they didn't. It was in January. So maybe that 24-minute mark, maybe we'll be the Detroit Lions of this year, and we'll flip and finally win one, because I can't take it anymore. I don't think any of us can take it anymore. But
like, do you remember the 2022 shootout with Detroit? When you could tell how good that Detroit team was, and Tua was just shredding them apart, like just dicing them.
That in the Chicago game, our defense didn't show up for those games, and Tua was just throwing it all over the place. I think he just came back from his injury.
The Cleveland game. Remember the Cleveland game too?
Oh, well, let's hope this is the year, man. But Reason, thank you so much for stopping by, bud. Go check him out. If you aren't subscribed to Finside the NFL, what are you doing? What do you got going on over there?
Well, we got Dolphins After Dark and stuff like that I've started with Neil and Britt and Jennifer. Obviously, we got Richmond and Ball Game for every Wednesday for Finish Line, and then I got Fin Too Deep with Neil on Thursdays. But that's all going to change because you know how it turns. Here comes training camp. Here comes the season, and that season is going to be every day. I will be live Monday to Friday. Britt will have a special episode of Sideline Tea every Saturday, and then I'll basically be live twice on Sunday. So here comes the grind, baby. Yep. You know what I mean? So it's the time of the year we live for, right? It's the most exciting time. There's nothing like, listen, bro. There's nothing like waking up on Sunday and knowing you got a game to go watch. You know what I mean? And you miss that feeling. It's that feeling, different. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming on. And then this week I'm going to be doing my first training camp preview of the offense with some prospect profiles attached to all 22 of Patrick Paul, Malik Washington, and Jalen Wright. And then next week I'll drop the defense and special teams, and I'll have prospect profiles of with all 22 of Chop and Mo Kamara, and if I feel like it and have time, some Patrick McMorris.
Go subscribe, check him out. Fantastic stuff. Reason. This won't be the last time. Thanks for stopping by.
Appreciate you for having me, Doug.